What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back with another video. And today we're going to be looking at the biggest busts in NHL history. So some of the guys that were picked very, very high in the NHL draft and did not pan out to what they were supposed to be. Now, I did just make a video on Nail Yakupov. Thank you guys very much for the support and on whether or not he was a bust. And I think we all kind of agree that Yakupov, unfortunately, is a bust. But in this video, we're going to look at some of the all-time busts in NHL history. I know the NHL has made videos on this, and I thought I would just kind of give my take on it as well and look at stats and history, and maybe some people haven't seen those videos either, so I thought I would just bring out some information that I have with me, and let's get right into it. The first name I'm going to be talking about is Brian Lawton. Now, these are in no particular order. I'm just bringing up the ones that I got information on. He was drafted first overall in the 1983 draft by the Minnesota North Stars. Lawton actually has some history tied to him. He entered the NHL as the first American-born player to be drafted first overall. Obviously a huge feat and something that he had some history tied to him already, so there you go, that's the start of the hype train. Lawton's numbers weren't absolutely terrible, but being the first overall pick, your career numbers probably have to be higher than what's here. 483 games, he had 112 goals and 266 points. Again, I had to bring it up like in the Yakupov video. When you're selected number 1 overall, your hype goes way up. You're expected to be amazing. I mean, he was the first American-born NHLer to go first overall in the draft. So clearly, those points do not add up to that hype. The reason why Lawton is on this list is because of names that came after him. So Pat LaFontaine went number 3, Steve Yzerman went number 4, and Tom Barrasso went number 5. And that's only, some of the guys that were named. And I would, unfortunately, for the Minnesota North Stars at that time, any of those guys would have been a much better selection. And that is why Lawton has to be on this list. 1983 first overall pick by the Minnesota North Stars. Unfortunately, a bust. The next name is actually a name that I'm quite familiar with, much like some of the guys on this list, of course, but this guy I know quite a bit because of the fact that I am a goalie. I like to study goalies. And Rick DiPietro, unfortunately, has to be on this list. The 2000 draft, he went first overall to the New York Islanders. Now, before I go into anything deeper, I mean, taking a shot at a goalie first overall is something that not a lot of teams will do. Obviously, they did a bit back then, but today, I guarantee you that unless it's just an out-of-this-world prospect, most teams will not go after a goalie as their number 1 pick. You just never know with goalies. It's kind of up in the air. I'm not going to bring up a ton of numbers in this video because the reason why Rick DiPietro is kind of a bust, maybe one of the biggest, since I'm bringing it up in this video, I'm not, the end-all be-all, but technically he could be one of the biggest busts in NHL history in my books and to other people because of the fact that he signed a pretty massive deal, which we'll get to in just a second. But it's not his numbers that really hurt him. Yes, his numbers weren't as good after the injuries, but it was his numbers before weren't exactly a huge problem. Rick DiPietro is a very, very talented goalie before the injuries, but that being said, he got a ton of injuries. Some of the injuries here, knee, groin, hip, he got concussed from, I believe he was in a fight and he got concussed that way. The deal did not look good for the Islanders. They signed him to a 15-year, $67.5 million contract, and that obviously did not work out for the Islanders because of all those injuries. They weren't having a starting goaltender, especially one that was worth that much money. The injuries really killed his career, unfortunately, and they had to buy him out in 2013. And I'm not sure if they're still paying him, but it was very recently that they stopped paying him. The worst part about this and what makes him even more of a bust pick is the fact that they traded away Roberto Luongo to make sure that Rick DiPietro would have the crease and have the money going forward. And clearly we know that that was a bad decision as Luongo is still playing and is one of the best goalies of all time. The next guy on the list is Pavel Brendl, who went 4th overall in the 1999 draft to the New York Rangers. Pavel Brendl's NHL career never really had any traction to it. It basically never started, and it obviously did not pan out to be what the New York Rangers wanted it to be. He was a natural goal scorer. He had a lot of skill, a lot of talent, and by the research, he was taken 34th overall by the WHL's Calgary Hitmen in the 1998 CHL import draft, and he was incredible. And you know, in North America, he was one of the best skaters and one of the best players available. And he climbed up the draft rankings and went number 4 to the New York Rangers. And unfortunately, right after that, and for the New York Rangers, this is not very good, the production basically was non-existent. He never had anything going right for him. He was apparently very lazy, and that's not good if you're the 4th overall selection in any draft. He had 11 goals and 22 points in 78 games, but he split time between the Flyers, Hurricanes, and Coyotes. So the 1999 draft was much better than, you know, what the New York Rangers got, and that's clearly not a good thing for the Rangers. I mean, in that draft, some guy named Henrik Zetterberg was taken quite far down at pick number 210. Yeah, a lot of people missed out on him. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this guy, Patrick Stefan, and hopefully I'm saying that correct, but in the 1999 draft, he went 1st overall to the Atlanta Thrashers, and I believe this was the expansion year. I think by my research, it is correct. This was their first draft, and Patrick Stefan was their guy that they wanted to take number 1. In 455 career games, he had 64 goals and 188 points, and he never made it to the playoffs. Again, another 1st overall pick that just couldn't get it done. The points weren't there, and he just never lived up to his hype. One thing that I forgot to realize, and when I did the research, it popped up, and I was like, oh my god, I know exactly where this guy is from, and this is not something you want to remember from a 1st overall selection. In his final season, he played with the Dallas Stars. He went in on a breakaway with an empty net to seal the deal, end of the game with like 10 seconds left. He trips, falls because he didn't shoot it. He tried to mess around with it and then shoot. But he messed around with the puck, and he ended up falling over. The Oilers took it the other way, and I believe Alex Hemsky, that name always, it's a tongue twister for me, but he went in, I believe he faked to the glove hand and went to his backhand, and backhanded it into the net for the Oilers to tie the game. So that is obviously not a great way to be remembered, especially when it comes to you being a 1st overall selection. And you guys could probably all go look it up. It's right there. And also, in this draft, in the next 2 spots at number 2 and 3, 2 guys that retired this year, Henrik and Daniel Sedin. So clearly not a great selection. And Henrik and Daniel went on to have incredible careers. Obviously, it's done now. I'm saying obviously too much, but the Sedin twins would have been a much better selection, at least one of them. The last name I'm going to be talking about is somebody that clearly a lot of people know about, because this is what some people might label as the biggest bust in NHL history. I don't think he is. Much like DiPietro, I'm not sure if I would put him as the biggest bust. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it DiPietro or DiPietro? Regardless, both ways it works. Alexander, again, I've heard both ways it's pronounced. Alexander Daig, 1993, 1st overall to the Ottawa Senators. I keep bringing it up in this video, hype after hype after hype. He was labeled as the next French-Canadian superstar, not even just, you know, next great player or good player. He was labeled as a superstar right off the bat. And he was apparently a can't-miss prospect that everybody was just going to be wowed by the minute he stepped into the league. And again, there was more comparisons. Pat LaFontaine, Joe Sakic, Rocket Richard, Steve Yzerman. If you do not live up to even remotely close to that hype, people will snap, and that's the problem. Much like when I talked about Yakupov last video and other people in this list, when you immediately get compared to not just good players or, you know, role players that get the job done, when you get labeled as a superstar compared to people who are Hall of Fame caliber players, and you do not perform, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. He did have a decent rookie season. He had 20 goals and 51 points. He only had 129 goals and 327 points in 616 career NHL games. So again, the points do not match up to what he was labeled as. His career high in goals was 26 in one season, and everybody just labels him as a bust. And those numbers aren't too bad for a mid-draft guy. Like, that's actually probably pretty decent for a middle of the pack draft. But more people that were drafted after him were clearly better options. Chris Pronger was at number 2, and Paul Correa was at number 4. How do you mess that up? Those guys are generational talent, amazing Hall of Fame hockey players. So let me know what you guys think. I will be doing another video on some of the draft steals. I like these types of videos where, you know, I have to do research and, you know, deliver it in a different style. So if you're new, make sure you subscribe. Love to have more hockey conversations with you. Join the squad. I'll see you in the next video or stream. Peace.